Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to give a little update on Bitcoin here because I'm a little bit concerned with the newest high that we just put in, which I talked about yesterday on stream. I think it's pretty likely that we'll see a new high printed fairly soon, and that came to fruition today. It's a little bit lackluster and insignificant. As you can see, we are making these new higher highs, but how significant are they, at least relative to the previous action we've seen before? So by the end of today and tomorrow, I'd want to see Bitcoin trading a bit higher, ideally around the 96 to 97K range, so we can take out the rest of the short sellers that came in late, and then we could start to see some better structure form. But if we can't do that, and this is the high that we are to print today, it means that we still have all the longs that haven't been invalidated. We were able to take out the shorts, but not very significantly, and we can see that the supply is heavily outweighing the demand, even though we are able to get a pump. Ideally, you want to ask yourself, why couldn't it be a bit more? And if that's ever the case, it's usually a sign that supply is a bit heavy. So in the event that Bitcoin can't get a bit higher, we could see tests down all the way to 76 to 78, which I talked about in a previous video. This isn't an ideal scenario because it means that if they had longed it in 2025, it's likely that they've been invalidated by the time this happens. And if they haven't been invalidated, then it's likely that they'll be sharing the same invalidations as the lows that we put in April. You can call these equal lows, but they're not ideal for a bullish structure. They actually show a little bit of weakness. So I think today is pretty important, and so is tomorrow, and seeing if Bitcoin can actually produce a significant high. Because it stands right now, it's not very significant. It's a bit concerning when we look at the supply and demand. As far as Ethereum is concerned, Ethereum is looking a lot better. We're able to make significant highs, which is very important, but we must also consider the fact that if Bitcoin dumps significantly, Ethereum is likely to follow. And that's true for all the altcoins. So if Bitcoin starts to dump significantly, first area that we want to pay attention to on Ethereum is around 3050 because it's the next area to hold on the structure. We don't really want to go back down here again because we've already tested that, and then we'll stack even more invalidations and start to create a weaker structure. So it's important to pay attention to Ethereum's strength if Bitcoin is to dump. Obviously with Bitcoin pumping, Ethereum's actually doing quite well. It's very impressive, but we also want to see how Ethereum fares when and if Bitcoin starts to dump. And if we see that strength and we see it hold at 3050, despite the fact that Bitcoin has, trading maybe below 80K, that would show huge strength in the Ethereum markets. If Bitcoin is able to produce a little bit of a higher high, again, I want to see around 96, 97. I don't really want to be floating around in these areas because as you can see, based off the relative volatility, that would be quite insignificant. But if Bitcoin is able to trade a bit higher, there is an opportunity on Ethereum to potentially short it. I'm not a huge fan of this short because, as you can see, even as a swing trade, the risk reward is really high, which means that the probability of the short working out is rather low. But it is the next area for the bearish structure, and of course we want to pay attention to what Bitcoin's doing at this time, if Ethereum's able to get up to around 3500 again. So Ethereum's been trading nicely, it's very fluid, it's also been doing better than Bitcoin, but it still is at the mercy of the market sentiment of Bitcoin. If we see a significant dump from Bitcoin, and obviously it's going to have ramifications on Ethereum and the rest of the alt market. So while Ethereum does look good, it's important to keep in mind that we have to keep an eye on Bitcoin. And of course, Bitcoin, as you guys know, trends fairly similarly with the S&P 500. And I told you guys yesterday on stream that I think that the volatility index could kick up around 18, 19 areas. Right now it's around 16. If that's the case, then we're going to see the S&P drop a little bit. I'm not expecting major volatility. If major volatility does come in, then that's going to be a huge red flag. But a small correction back into like the 66 range would make sense before we go up for an all-time high. And if that's the case, then the negative market sentiment coming in from the S&P is obviously going to affect Bitcoin slightly because of how the market-making models are built around most of crypto. And so if the S&P is expected to potentially correct a bit, it's unfortunate timing for Bitcoin. It could also lead to sort of the supply overtaking demand and going to find a new low, which ultimately would have an effect on Ethereum as well. But speaking about the relationship between Ethereum and Bitcoin, it's actually going lovely. So I've been talking about this on stream for the past couple months about where we need to hold from a structural standpoint on Ethereum Bitcoin, and it's been following the plan quite nicely. The old way or approach to the crypto market was to long Bitcoin and short Ethereum as a hedge. I'm starting to think that we might see that flip around a bit. Of course, it's too early to call, but we could see in the future that the play would be to long Ethereum and short Bitcoin as a hedge, at least for a short period of time. But we'll see how that develops further. I just want to let you guys know that, of course, Ethereum not only is outperforming Bitcoin, but it's holding in much better spots, and the structure looks a bit better than Bitcoin. All right, that's a quick update on the markets, boys. I might be live tomorrow for the FOMC movements, so keep an eye on the Discord. That's where I'll notify you if I go live. Thanks for watching, guys.